We won't get bogged down. France's foreign minister issuing that pledge with confidence after the fall of northern Mali's two largest cities, Gao on Sunday and Timbuktu this Monday. Crowds cheering as the mythical city fell to French and Malian forces without a single gunshot. It's been 2 weeks since Paris launched a fast-moving offensive. The next target, the northeastern city of Kidal. Coalition of jihadist rebels and Tuareg separatists that took over the north 10 months ago, now avoiding, it seems, a direct confrontation as it continues to hold 11 Western citizens hostage. Before quitting Timbuktu, the jihadists left their calling card, though, reportedly torching a library that's home to manuscripts dating back to the 12th century. As West African troops deploy, France getting a boost from Washington over the weekend with the announcement that the U.S. will provide transport and refueling, but it might be premature to declare mission accomplished and go home. What's next for France and its African allies as they deploy? How do you chase radicals across the Sahara Desert without getting bogged down? Today in the France 24 debate, what happens after the fall of Timbuktu? With us from Bamako, France 24's Catherine Norris-Trent is with us. And here in the studio, Jean-Charles Brisard of security risk consultants, JCB Consulting. Welcome back, sir. Welcome to retired U.S. diplomat William Jordan, who between postings to Paris and North Africa, headed the State Department's Maghreb office. Thank you for being with us. And American freelance journalist and documentary filmmaker Michael KIRTLEY, who's often reported from the region. The France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24Debate. Catherine Norris-Trent, you've been driving back from up country to the capital this Monday. What's reaction been along the way upon hearing the news from Timbuktu?
A lot of people very relieved, Francois. People in the north of Mali and down here in Bamako, the capital, are very pleased. But they're treating this news also cautiously. People from Timbuktu that I've spoken to, people who fled the region, are telling me that, of course, they're very excited to hear the news. They're relieved for family members who've been stuck in Timbuktu. But they're also saying they're not going to head back there straight away because they're worried this is far from the end. They say they're going to leave it a few weeks, a few days already. They're not sure the roads to get back up there are 100% safe, and they're worried further battles and reprisals could come off this.
Of course, a lot of refugees and displaced people from the area. There's also sobering tales coming through, people whose hands have been chopped off telling their story, and word that before leaving on Sardine, Catherine reportedly torched a library that's home to many invaluable manuscripts dating back to the Middle Ages.
Yes, that's right. In fact, we interviewed a man just this afternoon. He's one of the last calligraphers from the town of Timbuktu. He's fled and he's extremely worried, as you can imagine, about the heritage, the cultural heritage of Timbuktu. He's brought with him some of his manuscripts which belong to his family dating back to the 15th century. But of course, he's very fearful about what's happened in that library. He says he saw it as a last act of revenge by Islamists leaving the town. So as well as the problems that people there have had to face, water shortages, food shortages, the phones being cut off, they're also worried, he's also worried as a calligrapher, about what's happening to the archives of Timbuktu.
All right, so the caution when it comes to what's actually happening in Timbuktu. By the way, there's caution as well on the France 24 debate Facebook page. Otto writing, Timbuktu falling without a shot? This is bad. It means they did it on purpose, and it will be a nightmare. Jean-Charles Brisard, first of all, are you surprised at the French? Are they ahead of schedule, or did you expect things to go the way they have?
No, we were expecting the jihadists to flee into the desert, and especially into the mountainous region of Kidal, to take advantage of the vast, territory of the desert, and also take advantage of the terrain in mountainous region of Kidal. It is clearly a tactical withdrawal from them, and probably the will is to attract us into a kind of guerrilla warfare with them, in their own.
On their own turf.
On their own turf, yes. And so, yes, we were expecting that kind of strategy from them, tactical at least.
And How do you avoid that? How do you avoid getting bogged down?
You cannot avoid to go on the ground and to go after each pocket of resistance one after another. That is what they want us to do, and we will have to do it with the African troops or without them.
All right, you mentioned the northeastern city of Kidal, which is the last major city still under rebel control. The Tuareg rebel MNLA movement claims it's now in control of that city. It broke early with the jihadists, saying the French army is welcome, but not the Malian army. That's according to a spokesperson, Michael Kirtley, who spoke to the Reuters news agency.
Well, the MNLA has said all along that they would not tolerate the return of Malian troops into the area for what that's worth. In terms of controlling Kidal, what one needs to understand is that the leader of the MNLA, Bilal Al-Sharif, is from Kidal. He's a member of the ECOWAS tribe, which is the biggest Tuareg tribe in that particular region. So you have to think that when they talk about controlling Kidal, it may be just a family question, and also keeping in mind that the leaders, the traditional leaders of Kidal, have been pushing the leadership of Ansar-Dine to change their tune for many months now. So there's probably inside Kidal a desire on the part of the population, especially the leadership, the cultural leadership there, to change over from what was happening under Ansar-Dine. And I think that in a certain sense, MNLA provides, it could fill that void.
All right, so does it sound like what's happening in Kidal is kind of what happened in Timbuktu with the jihadists slipping away?
It's not the same thing, obviously, because the French aren't in Kidal. And I think it's more, keep in mind that Kidal is the fiefdom of the Tuareg situation as far as Azawad. Both of the chieftains of Ansar-Dine and the chieftains of the MLA, come from Kidal. Therefore, you have not only a factional or political dispute, but you have a family question. I met with Bilal Al-Sharif not very long ago, the head of the MNLA, and he said that right now, that as far as the MLA is concerned, they hated Iyad Agali, who is the head of the Ansar-Dine. So there's going to be some intestinal warfare there, in my opinion, and I think that it's very likely that the French, when they go in there, they're going to have to deal with, well, are they going to fight Malians or not, and how they're going to do that. Will they negotiate? If the MLA is in charge of Kidal in some form or another, how are they going to handle it? Because they also have to face the question of the MLA is not recognized by the government of Mali as a broker in this particular situation.
On that point, by the way, Nigeria's foreign minister says he's all for bringing the MNLA into the fold, but on two clear conditions. Any group that is ready to dialogue with ECOWAS or the AU, the African Union, must recognize the government in Bamako and the indivisibility of Mali. This has kind of been a slow boil ever since this hodgepodge coalition, you could say, took over the north of Mali. Some are Arabs, some are Tuaregs. The idea has been to try to get some to the bargaining table. And how successful would you say that's been so far?
Well, I don't think it's been very successful at all, unless you privilege sort of the Algerian thesis that you can divide and conquer and drive a wedge. I mean, I think to date, you know, what's probably been the most compelling point of pressure in the conflict to try to bring people to the table has been the speed of this French advance and the fact that the situation is changing daily and hourly. You know, these fissures, these cleavages within these movements are long-standing and deep. They don't all want the same thing. But I'm not sure how easily anybody's going to be able to sit down and talk about this with the Malian government, even under you know, the circumstances of a rapid, quote-unquote, liberation of the territory.
Well, certainly French public opinion knows that it's not over. This week's cover story in right-of-center news weekly Le Point. Our Islamist enemies shows Ansar Din's Iyad Aghali on your left. Mokhtar Belmokhtar, he's the one who led the group which 10 days ago attacked that Algerian gas export site. He's in the middle. And Abdelhamid Abu Zaid, another Algerian, in charge of Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. And that's further to your point about how these are not all the same people, but and they're not all Malians either.
Certainly not. They are people who, and in fact, that's been one of the points of irritation for a long time. Many Malians consider what you're seeing in northern Mali to be basically an Algerian problem exported into their country and left by the Algerians to deal with it on their own, which they've clearly not been able to do. I mean, the AQIM, and I tend still to include Mokhtar Belmokhtar in this group, has made a point of internationalizing their membership and to recruit as many people from the surrounding countries as possible, so that it's not an entirely or entirely Algerian group, or that it's maybe an Algerian-led group, but that it has some credibility as far as it's perpetuating its struggle in neighboring countries. But you're absolutely right, and that underlines the different agendas and the different motivations that all of these groups are operating from.
All right, France's president says we're winning this battle, but it's up to Africans to help Mali win back its territorial integrity. Earlier, François Hollande's foreign minister spoke to French public broadcaster France 2.
Terrorist groups are employing a strategy of avoidance, and some of them could go further north in Mali.
Should we intervene?
We don't want to get bogged down. We need to be very careful and learn from previous conflicts. France is doing what it should for Mali and for the international community, but we don't want to get bogged down.
All right, won't get bogged down. Michael Kirtley, famous last words?
You know, I think the way to look at that is...
Because you were telling me before the show began that you know that the geography of that area of the northeastern Mali.
Well, think of the mountains there, just sort of to describe them a little bit. They're relatively low-lying mountains, but they're full of gullies, they're full of caves, they're full of sand, and they're full of sparse trees. And the people that are in Kidal and in Timbuktu that have gone to the mountains know these mountains better than anybody probably ever has known these mountains, because they were there. Some of them were there before, and they're the backwaters of all of the ECOWAS tribes that make up the Ansar Din group. You would have to say that maybe Moujao doesn't know them as well. Moujao is the other group that's been operating mainly out of Gao. But this is very stark wasteland that's very easy to hide in and very, very easy to create ambushes. You have to compare it to the Wild West in America that way if you want to. So in terms of getting bogged down, I think that it really depends on the French strategy.
All right, Jean-Charles Brizard, let me ask you about this, because lots of people here in France have been saying the drones. So what can drones do in helping to locate people if they're hiding in these mountain areas?
Well, in fact, not much. I mean, first, we don't have a lot of drones. And the second thing is we're dealing with a vast territory. And especially, as described by earlier, it is a mountainous landscape, not very easy for troops. But again, this is the territory where they want those groups, even if they're, as it has been said, divided over the strategy. Some are for international conflict. Others are for more regional centered operations, such as the Moujao, which is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb. But all of them will probably try to get into an asymmetric conflict, both in Mali and outside Mali. We've seen a lot of calls for retaliation against France, and both in Africa, mostly in Africa, and also in France. So this has to do with the strategy of these groups we'll have to face.
All right, the French Foreign Minister, you heard him there, just there saying we won't get bogged down. Again, and this is further to your point, how do you chase small, determined bands of fighters across an expanse as wide as the Sahara Desert? William Jordan, I know you know Algeria well for having been posted there. We had word of an attack on a gas pipeline Sunday evening in Algeria. Is it the same people?
Very likely, or at least the northern cousins of the people who are in northern Mali. I mean, AQIM is fundamentally an Algerian group, and it is still waging war against the Algerian government. I'm not aware of who, if anybody, has yet claimed responsibility for that gas pipeline attack. But sure, there's a link. Again, this gets into the sort of the weird aspect of the competition and cooperation aspect of these groups. They will compete in order to try to achieve the prize of the most spectacular and the most telling blows that they can land against Algeria, as we saw with Mokhtar Belmokhtar's attack in Ain Amenas, and with the various hostage situations that have occurred in northern Mali over the years. I mean, each faction will claim credit for those. And they're doing it in sort of a one-upmanship against one another. And yet when the pressure is on, and when they need to cooperate in order to succeed, they will. It makes this a very, very hard situation for us to get a handle on.
You make it sound like mission impossible for the West to do anything about these guys.
Well, I've always said that, you know, we tend to emphasize the Islamist ideology, you know, that is at play here. But I have for a long time tended to regard these people as thugs and bandits in the real criminal sense. And they you know, AQIM in particular operates, I think, much more as a criminal gang does. There are various alliances of convenience and all that are not easy to synthesize and boil down and therefore exploit in order to, you know, play one off against the other. They're very, very changeable, and I believe that the point just made, you know, we are probably going to find ourselves faced with some kind of an asymmetrical warfare situation where these groups are going to probably cooperate where we don't expect them to. At the same time, they may divide later on down the road where we don't expect them to.
All right, we're pleased to be joined at this point by Ambassador Aboudou TOURE. He is the West African Economic Community, ECOWAS's special envoy to Mali. Thank you for being with us from the capital, Bamako. Before we go to the break, let me just ask you this question. What's your reaction to the taking of Gao and Timbuktu, and how does it bode for all those troops that are starting to come in from all over West Africa?
Yes, I mean that after the intervention of Malian army and the French, now the troops of ECOWAS and Chad, they are deployed in Gao to secure the country there. I can affirm also that they are in Markala by Burkina Faso troops. They are in the locality of San also by Togolese troops. And Nigerians are based in Bamba. Now in Timbuktu, I mean that we are trying to move toward Timbuktu to try to secure strategic places as a stadium and other places.
Ambassador Toure, I'm going to interrupt you because we're going to have to take a quick break, but we'll pick up on how African troops are deploying when we come back. This is the France 24 debate.